Thank you so much for all your, Margaret's really the producer, and without her, Holly would not be able to be doing any of this today. So Margaret, thank you so much for being able to be part of this. This is our very first inaugural rollout of the open house and the campaign that we've got going on, which is Hired from Home. So just in an effort to, help people sort of sort through these uncertain times and restore some hope and, hopefully get people still moving along with their employment goals. There's no reason why that needs to stop right now. In fact, for some, this is probably the best time ever. You're able to actually get into developing your resume and being able to spend some significant amount of time with it. So today's session is really about just a quick in and a quick out. I think I was having this conversation with you, Andrew, when you first joined us. I want to just do a very broad, sweeping review of some of the top myths that are out there, with the hopes that you do, should you need any more support, employment support, or further direction on your resume, I'll give you my contact information at the end of the session, and you can certainly reach out to me individually, because there's, everyone's situation is different, and I'm still, we're still doing employment support 100%. You still have access to that. So we'll go through some, some tips and some tricks, and hopefully get some information from all of you as well. And yeah, we'll go from there. So that's number 2 of our session outcomes, is offering some helpful tips with developing your resume. We also want you to have the opportunity to learn from each other. That's so important, because I know some of you that are military spouses, you've certainly, you've been through the situation of having to pack your career up before and having to, get work in a new environment, a new community. So lots to learn from that expertise. And again, at the end, we'll show you how you can get connected and have some further opportunities to have one-on-one support. So that's hopefully what we're going to accomplish in the next hour. And I guess if you want to move forward there, Margaret, on the next screen, we'll get started. So this is us. This is us on a really good day. As I was saying to Margaret earlier, I've had this bad habit lately of falling asleep reading, so my glasses now sit kind of like 40 degrees different than they did when I first got them. So it's looking a little crooked out there. But my name is Holly Rye, and I'm the Employment and Education Services Coordinator here at the MFRC. And I've been walking these halls for about 18 years. And been in employment support for about 20, and I am a certified career development practitioner, so we're able to offer really enhanced employment opportunities and support with our program here at the MFRC. And basically the whole idea of career transition is something that I've been able to learn a lot about, experience a lot about, and help a lot of military spouses through. So glad to be here with you today, and I'm so happy that you're able to take a couple of minutes out of your day to join us in the spirit of, learning some more stuff about the whole world of job search, and yeah, participate in our Hired from Home series. Over to you, Margaret.
Absolutely. So thank you for that that welcome. 18 years experience. Wow, you've got a lot of experience. That's great. My name is Margaret McKenzie. I'm a military spouse with about, almost 30 years now of experience, 12 postings and more than 200 weeks of family separation. About 8 years ago, I was an executive director for a military family resource center without walls. So we had 400 families living in 16 countries, and we had to reach out. So 8 years ago, I learned how to reach out using this tool, and never looked back. So now I'm in training and program development and interactive online programming. So basically, it's not death by PowerPoint, anything else but, and it's engaging. And we're really excited to have this great presentation tonight by Holly. So thank you, Holly.
Oh, my pleasure. Okay, so like I said, we're going to do some quick in and outs with this, this particular session, because we are limited to time. And the first thing I really want to take a look at is really that first resume myth, which is your resume should only be 1 page. Margaret, we could probably make this a little bit more interactive if we want. How many people out there would agree with that statement? Give me a green check.
Green check if you agree, a red X if you do not. And if you don't have access to the green check, red X, then just put yes or no in the chat.
Okay, good, great. So this
Rebecca's
is
not sure. She goes back and forth.
Rebecca, are you feeling a little bit of peer pressure there? Okay, so the reality is, no, your resume should not be only one page, but believe it or not, this is one of the most widely, I guess, believed myth that we have out there, because most people feel that they have to limit all of their experience and their skills and competencies to cramming it into one specific page, and nothing could be further from the truth. If you cap things off to one page, you're going to limit yourself by cutting short some of the experiences that you probably really want to highlight, and that will also depend on the type of resume format that you use. So we'll talk a little bit about formats in the upcoming pages, but 2 pages is totally acceptable, and is actually, it's a standard. It's a job search standard now. So at the end of the day, the resume is really your marketing tool. So this is really about your calling card. And, you know, it's not about a trophy wall, or it's not about things that you've done, you know, back when you were in summer camp and you're in your teens. It's really about keeping those 2 pages specifically to information that would strengthen your application and what the employer is looking for and how you tie those 2 things in. And again, that's a topic that's another myth as well. But be strategic with your information. And the information that you choose to actually put on those 2 pages. And the best way to do that is to take the job ad and pull the experience from the job ad, see what the employer is looking for, and make sure that you use every possible opportunity in those 2 pages to highlight why you're the best candidate. And that's really at the basics, starting with how you match the qualifications of the job that you're applying for. So 2 pages should typically accommodate, you know, 10 to 15 years of experience. We'll get into a little bit more about how much experience you're going to put on your resume as well. And the last thing you really want to get yourself, you know, into is in a situation where you're using a really tiny font because you're feeling like you have to stick it all into one page and there's not proper white space on that page. And you're really trying to squish it all in, and that just doesn't leave you feeling good about, I'm sure, forwarding your resume on, nor does it give the employer a really good indication of, you know, how you present your information and ultimately how you communicate yourself. So yeah, no more worrying about the one pager. In fact, if there's anything I'd have to say about that, it's the opposite, and that's trying to condense a 3- and 4-page resume into 2 pages. So for those of you that have only ever used 1 page, woohoo, you got a whole new page now that you can start to populate.
There you go.
For those of you that have used 3 to 4 pages, we got to talk. We're going to skim some fat off the top.
Don't squish.
Any questions? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, don't squish and pull the experiences from the job ad.
Yes, absolutely.
Great point.
Every time. Any questions here at all before we move off of myth number 1 onto myth number 2? Does this clear anything up for anyone? And by all means, if you want to unmute, there's only 8 of us. If you have any questions that you want to ask about the 1 page, feel free.
You can raise your hands to ask a question, or just type yes in the chat if you're ready to go on. And just ready to go on.
I think we're good.
Good.
Good. Okay. That brings us to myth number 2. Resume myth number 2 is your resume must be formatted in one standard way. Wow, this is going to be a total newsflash for you guys, because there really is more than one way to format a resume. There's actually 3. There's the chronological style of a resume, which is probably what about 90% of us tend to use. And there's a functional, or some might know it as a skill-based resume. And thirdly, we've got what you call a hybrid, which obviously is the combination of a little bit of both, chronological and functional style resume. So again, this is one of those myths that I can tell you I probably see on a daily basis. Most people will default to a chronological style resume. It's what we know, it's what we've been doing for a long time, it's what we were taught in high school, even in university. And unfortunately, it's the type of format that does really limit some people more so than others. So, you know, if you look at a person, if you take two people, for example, with two completely different backgrounds, let's say one person is in business and maybe the other person is in music or visual arts. Those two industries are completely different. So it would only make sense that the resume style and format would look different as well. I guess if there's anything that I could really leave with you know, in terms of advice with formatting your resume, is it's really about the best approach of knowing what your audience is and also the industry in which you're applying. And that will usually give you a pretty good telltale in terms of what style of resume you would use. The format that you choose for your resume should allow you to lead with your strengths always. There's nothing worse than being in a situation where you use a type of resume like a chronological style resume and it leaves you with gaps in your experience. It might leave you with infrequent disruptions in employment. And now all of a sudden you've taken something that's really supposed to be your marketing tool, something that's supposed to allow you to put your best foot forward, and now you're almost on a defensive about your experience because you're having to justify why your resume doesn't sequentially flow or doesn't go from year to year to year. So why even put yourself in that situation is my question. You always have to think about it in terms of how do you present yourself best and with those strengths, and not get yourself in a situation where you're right off the bat trying to defend why you have some disruption in your experiences. So even with like a military spouse, for example, I see most people usually come in with a chronological style resume because we have all used those. It's the most commonly used. And then it's, well, but I have some disruption here, and the employer is seeing that I've only been with this particular job for a couple of years or months. Now I've had to move on. It's because of the style of resume that you're using. The other unfortunate thing about the formatting is that, let's just pick on chronological because it's the easiest. It really limits you in terms of what you can present in your resume. Because with a chronological style resume, it's all about the position that you've held and the responsibilities that you've had in that position and the time or the dates. And that's about it. With a functional style resume or a hybrid format, it really allows you to hone in on the skill set that you have to offer the employer. And that skill set can go back as far as you want to recall, as long as you can demonstrate and prove that you have that particular skill. So now all of a sudden, by switching the style of format, you've really opened up those opportunities for you to consider other types of employment or other directions that you might want to see your career go in. It's actually really liberating when you can match a style or a format of a resume with the type of jobs that you're looking for and where you are in your life. You know, you might be in a situation where you've just graduated from university or school and you want to continue on the path that you've set for yourself and you're good to go. You want to see it as a succession. Or you might be in a place in your life like some of us who have already done all of that part of work life, and we want to maybe take things in a different direction. So the format would be key in helping us to be able to transition into something that is completely different from what we have done professionally, but what we might do and like personally and have skills that situate ourselves to be able to explore those directions. So is there any questions at all on formatting style?
There was one question. Can you put a picture on your resume? Not a picture of yourself, but a picture of your skill or something like that?
So a couple of years ago, we got into this habit of, and it happened for a long time, resumes had to look a very specific way. And now, like things like Pinterest, if you go into Pinterest, you're going to see, and you just, you do a search on resume formats, you're going to see some pretty cool stuff. And here's the thing. People that are just graduating from university or who are just beginning sort of that first decade of work, they're doing all that cool stuff. And that stuff really stands out, especially in specific industries. So my advice to you is read, like I said, read your labor, the local labor market, read the actual industry that you're in, know what people are doing, and have some fun with it if you can. If you're applying for a position where your creativity is something that you're going to be hired for, there's your answer. Be creative with your resume. If they're looking for somebody and you're in a position where you're looking at specifically an administrative role, they're going to look more towards how you're managing that information and how you're presenting it maybe in a more of a report or a traditional kind of format. So knowing your audience will really give you, it'll give you your creative liberties, or it'll set your standard. Any other questions at all around formats?
Mine probably is not about format, but I'm just looking at when, for instance, you're using the chronological format. How do you account for gaps? Let's say you were unemployed for about 6 months to 1 year period.
Mm-hmm.
If it's so how do you account for that gap in that kind of resume? I know with the functional, you don't really have to do that.
Yeah. So you might what you might want to do is in your career profile, which is at the top of your and this is why, getting into specifics here, Andrew, I'll not take a lot of time with that, but I'm more than happy to answer your question one-on-one. But I will say this. So the career objective, right now, a career objective is it's overstated, it's overused, it's done. It's actually, something that is obvious. The objective is to get the job. So instead of placing a career objective on your resume, you're better off to do what they call a career profile. And in the profile, which is usually about 3 to 4 sentences long, you can address the absences there if you want. But I would even go so far to say as make that first page about the skill set that the person is looking for, so that it's not until the second page that they're even looking at possibly any type of gap. Don't be concerned with using, in terms of the dates, stick to year to year. Don't use month to year and month to year, because that's way too much information for people. And that might help you as well, right? So if it's, 2006 and you had a gap of 6 months, just put 2006. Because at the end of the day, I'm not suggesting that you don't represent yourself correctly, but does it really matter at that point until you get into the actual interview, which is the whole purpose of the resume? That's something that you can have a conversation with if that comes up.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Does that help?
It does help, yes.
Okay, dokie. Wow, that page was great, Margaret. You got all kinds of stuff on there. Awesome. This is why I love working with you. You can just populate that stuff so easy. All right, let's move on to myth number 3. So, and I think some of this kind of leads into another. Resumes should be general to increase your chances of getting a job. So what they're suggesting here is as general as possible. Then, they'll be able to find a link or they'll read something that will tie in and it'll all be great. Well, this could be further from the truth. I hate to say it. And with that, I hate to say that you are going to have to invest some time and some effort each time you apply for a job. Because each time you apply for a job, it's essential that you make sure that your application reflects what the job requirements are. I can't say it any clearer than that. It's really about customizing your job search. So if you're in a situation where, a general resume would work for somebody who is probably a high school student, maybe even an undergrad student who is, just sort of, within, not quite graduated, but they're just going for those survival jobs, those jobs that you have part-time. That's a great opportunity for someone to use a general resume. But the further you get into your career and the more strategic you want to be with where you want to land, you've got to really put the effort into making sure that things aren't general. In fact, they're always the opposite. They're extremely specific. And because they're so specific, there's information there that you're going to be able to leave out or include depending on what your situation is. And really, a general resume does not reflect the competitive job market that we have. And this is even based on before we've had COVID. Now that we have 25,000 people in Nova Scotia out of work, and that's a statistics from 2 weeks ago, you know, the job market will be competitive. And unfortunately, with, you know, some of those businesses that just will not recover from this, there's going to be a large pool for a very limited amount of jobs. All the more reason to make sure that your resume, your calling card, your marketing tool is as specific as possible in terms of what that employer is looking for. So I can almost guarantee you, if you're not getting responses from your resume, it's probably because your resume is either A, full of gaps, so that gives you what's called a red flag to employers, or it's just too general that the employer cannot see you in their work environment, right? So things like, you know, oh, well, the employer can read from that, you know, I have that. No, that's not their responsibility. The responsibility or the onus is really always on the applicant to make sure that all of those connections are made and that employer sees how you are the best candidate for the job. It's not about them reading between the lines or taking the additional time to pull anything out of your resume, because they got 300 underneath you that they have to go through. By the way, that's the total right now, I guess, that they're suggesting. For every position that's posted, you're looking at about 250 to 300 people that are applying. And that's not...
Serious?
Yeah, that's kind of scary, isn't it? But it's not even 250 to 300, you know, applicants that meet the criteria. It's just that such a flood of the market makes it that way. So even more the reason for you to have to stand out and to make sure that you've set yourself apart for sure. So the best thing you can do in terms of how do you change from having a general approach to a resume to a more specific approach, always use the job ad. That will be your blueprint, I guess, for a better word. Even things like industry speak, like how that particular industry talks. So maybe, you know, I know we float around about 3 different ways to describe our community. I use client, some people use parents, some people use community members, some people use family. So those little nuances in language are really going to make a difference in your resume, because it's going to show that employer that you've taken the time to really invest and do some research about the organization. And in doing that research, you know, that's where you're going to learn about, I don't know, maybe some initiatives that the company is undertaking, or more importantly, what that prospective employer is looking for in terms of your skills and your experience, even your attitude, your qualifications for the position. You really can learn a lot from doing a little bit of research. And things like that, if you start to implement them in your job search strategy, using, you know, a different lens, I guess, to look at your resume, and realizing that there are certain things that you really want to highlight that maybe don't necessarily exist in your general resume, all the more reason for you to sort of switch directions, do a little bit of a course change, and, you know, really start to implement some strategies that will focus your resume to the needs and the wants of the employer. All right, have we got any other questions with that particular one?
Welcome to put the questions in your chat, or if you want to give us your voice, you can raise your hand. Denise, did you have a question? Go ahead.
Yeah, what about if you're going in a completely new direction from your past experience?
Yeah, so that would be, Denise, that would be actually career transition. And again, another probably best approach for you on that would be either a combination style resume or a format that is functional. Because even though you've had a specific job, with a trade, you've also got some amazing transferable skills there. So, you know, maybe in your job you've had the opportunity to lead and to supervise or manage, and let's say that might be a direction that you want to go into. So you're going to, you know, through a functional style resume, really be able to pick out those specifics that that employer is looking for.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Yeah. The other thing too is this is a really neat, neat kind of a tip. If you're reading a job ad and let's say they say something like, you know, the successful applicant will have the following qualifications. And let's, for argument's sake, let's say, I don't know, communications, customer service, and time management. And in reading what their job ad has to say, you're noticing that, you know, communications has taken up half of their ad. What you can infer from that is that that is a pretty key component for an applicant to have. They've placed a lot of emphasis and time and space on describing what that particular skill is. So take that hint and make sure that you recreate that in your resume. Whatever they've spent a lot of time talking about is what they want to see in your resume. And that's a pretty simple equation. It's a really good kind of check and balance. So if you've spent a lot of time on your resume and your resume is reflecting a skill set that they haven't even mentioned in the job ad, that's not going to bow any weight for them. And again, that general resume, you know, that kind of gets you down into that trap where you're just hoping to goodness that someone is going to be able to link the fact that you did this means that you could do this. Don't forget, they don't know you. Right? So they have no, you know, prior knowledge, they have no recollection, they're seeing you for the very first time. So as though, you know, it's like you see that that's the most obvious thing ever because obviously you know yourself, but to somebody who has got absolutely no idea who you are and what you're capable of, they're not going to pull that out of anything. They're not going to have the time to do that. That really has to be about the effort that you put in as an actual applicant. Denise, did you have your hand up for the past question, or did you have another question?
Sorry, that was for the past question.
Okay, no worries.
All right.
Okay, let's go on to myth number 4. We should have like Ghostbuster music or something. We got to get a way to put some music in the stuff. Okay. So, should my resume include all of my work history? So I'll tell you, you know how that saying goes, like if I had a dime for every time I had to have a healthy conversation with someone about this. When I mean healthy, it's in quotations, which usually means it's gotten heated. I'd be a rich person. No, you should not.
Love it.
That's right, courageous conversation. No, this is not a time, again, like we have said before, for you to include all of your work history. And I think really if you just go by the code of keeping it specific, you're not going to run into these issues at all. You know, but there's something else about this that I really want to unpack here. And I think a lot of people, myself included, really fall into this because when you look at your experience and you look at your resume, it's almost like it's a trophy wall, right? Like it is everything and anything you've ever done. It can include things like, oh, I don't know, like the money that you've spent for education, the time that you've spent working in a co-op or in a really crappy job that you hated, but it gave you great experience, or, you know, working for that nice, not so nice boss, or having the opportunity to really shine in an occupation that you love. That's all wrapped up into our resume, and that's identity. That's really something that we relate to because unlike anything else in life, that is so specifically our experience. So when we talk about having that opportunity to really release some of that information that really isn't about going back to all of those different workshops, what we're kind of asking you to do here is shift gears. And, you know, that's when people talk about the career obituary, because it has everything and anything on there. It's not meant for that. It's really not meant for that. So with that, when we're asking people to be constructive with what they present, it's really a personal thing because it really does mean everything that we've accomplished and gone through in however many years that we've been in the working, in the working world. And it is a shift in gears. So, understand that completely, appreciate that completely. I'm the same way myself. My resume is a couple of pages long and then some, depending on, the environment that you're in and the positions that you're applying for. But it really is about asking you to release the hold that you have on that information and use that information to your advantage so that you're not finding yourself in a situation where you're either hoping that somebody sees the thread between your experience and what they're looking for, or you're having to justify something because it's given you a gap and it's been so long since you've done it before. Another question that comes out of this whole myth too is, what if I have experience that's from a working situation that was years ago, but so prevalently kind of, relates to what this particular job is asking of me? I would caution you to think about where you should situate that in your resume, and would suggest to you that that should actually, instead of being reverse chronological, that should probably go up closer to the top of your work history, even though it's something that you've done a long time ago. Because what you'll find is, if you're really asking somebody to go through 2 pages of your information before they see what the little nugget is that they're interested in, that's too much of a commitment. They won't have that kind of time to do. So if you possess something in terms of a skill set or competency or experience that you've done years ago, within reason, and you still have that skill and that's still something that you're able to do, you need to put that, reposition that, and bring that back up to the forefront so that they're seeing that right away. And if nothing else, they're engaged to read further. Does that make sense? Raise your hand if that makes sense. Let's get people thinking a little bit about that.
Lots of hands.
Yeah, lots of hands, yeah. So, and that happens to us a lot. You kind of started off in a particular occupation or a job, and for whatever reason found yourself on a different, journey, and then one day you're looking for work and you see that sort of similar type of work, and you're thinking, I could really do that job. Like, that's not a problem at all. It's another reason why a chronological resume, unfortunately, wouldn't work. But, take that experience. The one thing that you do have through your whole life of working, as soon as you leave a job, you no longer own that position title, and, it's not yours. That belongs to the job and the organization that you left. What you do own is your skills, and your skills are your currency. And what I mean by that is that's that little bag of tools and tricks that you have that you've developed from all of those other positions. So your currency then becomes about, this is what the commodity is. This is what I have to offer an employer. I have the opportunity for an employer to benefit from my time management skills, from my supervision skills, from my program development skills, whatever that looks like. That's my currency. That's the thing that I bring to the competition that others might not. Okay.
Question here.
Yeah.
If you wanted to put more, could you also attach a portfolio with your resume?
Who's talking portfolio? I love portfolio. Is there somebody talking portfolio? Yes. The problem with the portfolio is, and I'm a portfolio practitioner, so I love portfolios. And for those of you that don't know about portfolios, get to know them because they're an amazing thing. It has to do with your RPL, which is your recognized prior learning. So Denise, if I can make you as one of my examples in a good way, you would have a significant portfolio because you'd have all of that military experience. In fact, portfolio development was actually an initiative done with the military years ago. I mean, I've been doing portfolio development for 20 years since I was with Department of Community Services. So it started out as a pilot project to see how people who had significant amount of military experience could successfully transition to civilian world. So the idea of portfolio development is fantastic. What you have to find out about, or what you have to do with portfolio development is you have to get used to using a portfolio in an interview. And this is certainly a topic for another day. But the idea is that the portfolio supports a specific skill set, right? So, you know, your portfolio, I've seen, and I'm not kidding you, I've got colleagues who have portfolios that are binders and binders and binders, and each binder is a skill. But if you can pick from what you have and bring that binder with you to an interview, at the very least, you can suggest that, you know, you can go further into proving that you have that particular skill or giving evidence of that particular skill in a portfolio. So it's a powerful piece of work. And the problem is that you have to take your general portfolio, subdivide it into whatever that position is that you're applying for, should you get the interview, and just bring what it is that you need for that particular environment. Does that answer your question?
I'm excited for the next topic on portfolio.
I would love to do a virtual portfolio. I would love to do it, yeah. Okay, let's move on to our final myth, and that is, I love this myth actually. So yes, resume myth number 5. A great resume is the key to getting a job. Oh my goodness. Margaret, can we put this out to the group? I'd love to hear people's, how can we do this?
So a great resume is a key to getting a job. Please raise your hand when you're ready to share whether you believe it is or it is not and why.
Good one.
Oh, I see your hands are still up. Maybe put your hands down and then put them up again. Let's see.
Okay.
Hey, Andrew looks like he's ready to share. Is a great resume key to getting a job, yes or no, Andrew?
Well, I think a great resume is the key to being selected for the interview.
Bingo.
And the interview now is what is dependent on you getting the job, because you might have a great resume that gets you into the door, and then interview, you don't do well, sorry, you don't get a job.
Okay. So
and Liz, we'll just take 2 more. Liz, what's your thought?
Go ahead.
You're muted though. You have to.
Yeah, I agree with Andrew. It's what's going to get you an interview.
Yep, absolutely.
And the last one is Emily, and she's put it in the chat. It's key to getting an interview, not a job, in my opinion.
Right. Okay. So I'm preaching to the converted today. That's good. Okay. So funny story. Yeah. All right. How am I going to say this? So I've done a lot of hiring for the organization over the years, and you know, I can say with certainty, it's a really funny thing. Sometimes you'll get a resume, and that applicant will be like, oh, part the C's. Like that is the applicant. That is the person that's going to come in here, blow this right out of the water. That person will be the benchmark for all other applicants. We get so excited to meet that applicant because they have such a great resume and they've really nailed that whole, you know, taking what we were looking for and articulating it in their resume. You get excited. As a recruiter, you get really excited about that stuff because it's like, wow, like this is the person. And then the person comes in and it's like, where's that person? What happened to that applicant? So although, yes, we're all talking about resumes today, and it is one of the pieces of the marketing package that you use, the other most important thing is making sure that you've got some solid interview skills there. And if you in any way have any trepidation or fear or just, you know, anxiety around interviews, there's a whole host of things that we can do to help you with that. There's interview workshops, there's one-on-one support. But at the end of the day, all 3 of you, most of you who've answered, were absolutely right. The resume's sole purpose is to get you to the next part of the process, which is the interview. And let me tell you, congratulations if you've gotten an interview, because you've already beaten 95% of the competition. You've already proven to those particular employers that you're applying to that you can do the job. The whole point of the interview is, how are you going to do that job? And does that working style that you have, the personality or the you know, attributes in terms of skills and experience, is that going to sit and flourish in my organization? Are people going to work with that? Is that going to, you know, is that going to help my organization, or is it going to hinder it? And that's why you get into the whole thing around situational-based questioning and traditional-based questioning, and that's a day or another open house. But at the end of the day, if you have gotten an interview, then your resume has served you well. It has actually, you nailed it, right? You were able to tell them what they needed to hear and show that you're able to do the job. Benchmark has already been met. What they want to know in the interview is how are you going to do that job, and how are you going to respond to specific things like pressure and, you know, time management and all those other things. So pat yourself on the back if you've gotten the interview, because you're already 80% there. Well, 50, but we'll call it 80 for today, because, you know, really to get an interview is a really, yeah, your resume has done what it's meant to do. It has marketed you. It's like a sales pitch, right? It has marketed you to the next part of the process.
Holly, is network also another key to getting a job?
Oh, absolutely. And in fact, I think maybe what we'll do for our final open house, Margaret, is we'll do something around job search and the hidden job market, because the reality is that 80%, they're suggesting now, of jobs are hidden. So think about it. If you're spending 100% of your time applying to positions that are posted, you're only reaching 20% of the positions that are out there and available.
Wow.
Yeah, so when you look at it in terms of that and how you actually spend time and effort, and you know, things like LinkedIn now and social profiles, those are all key elements in a recruiter's handbag of tricks that they use to actually, to recruit and to find employees. So I think we might do that in our next open house, is really tapping into what, you know, that hidden job market looks like, and job search. Because, you know, job search is the job. It's a full-time job. So, you know, you can go about it with a strategy and be very focused with it, or it can be all over the map and take you a long time to find a job. So there's a good way of doing it and a not so good way of doing it.
A job search is a full-time job.
Yeah. Treat that like it is your job, right?
Thank you.
Okay. Wow. So we had a lot going on there. We've covered a lot of miles, everybody, in those five myths. But I want to take an opportunity now to just put it back to some of the questions that might exist in the participants, and you know, this is your time. Ask away. I'll try as best as I can to answer some of your questions. But is there something that is, you know, affecting you currently with your resume that you wanted to ask a question on, or clarity of something that we've covered?
Andrew, go ahead.
Okay. My question is taking us back to what we just finished.
Okay.
If we believe that 80% of the available jobs are hidden, how do we do our resume targeting those jobs when we don't even know what the job requirements are?
So the 80% that's hidden, it's about the strategy that you need to put in place to be able to tap into that 80%, right? And that requires things like having your LinkedIn profile done and completed. And changing your LinkedIn profile, if you're not getting any interest in your LinkedIn profile, then going back to seeing what is, you know, that labor market need, and aligning your profile with what it is that, you know, employers are looking for. So there's a little bit of labor market information in there as well, Andrew. And I feel like I'm telling you, I've told you this now for the second time, I got to have you one-on-one because we could go over this, because there's so much information just in that. But aligning, how do you align your resume with positions that you don't know, is a whole different approach to why aren't you looking for the positions that you want, and how do you go about getting those positions?
Okay.
That's the career practitioner in me. That's what I would ask you. Like if you and I were meeting, I'd say, well, okay, it's one thing to apply to what already exists, but what do you really want to do, and then how do you go about making that happen? Okay,
makes sense.
Yeah, so rhetorical questions at this point, but something I would be more than happy to explore with you on a one-on-one, because I think, you know, for most people, we've been trained to just apply to what's available, right? So these are the jobs that are available. I just got to get a survival job. Let me just attach myself to something quick and easy. Well, those people are the people that actually come back to me 6 months later saying, I'm hugely underemployed, I hate my job, I can't get out of it, help me. So, you know, I've got 40% of my caseload right now aren't unemployed, they're underemployed because the career decision making hasn't been informed at the beginning of the process.
Okay, Emily has a question. She says, I have significant volunteering experience but no work experience for the last 2 years. How do I best showcase my skills from volunteering?
Again,
and, Emily, you're welcome to add if you like. You want to unmute?
Yeah, can you, Emily? I think you and I are going to be talking about this anyway, aren't we, Emily?
Yes, we are. I wanted to let you know that I can attend that.
Oh, excellent. So anyway, how do you do that? You do that by using the right type of resume, the right format of resume, which would be, anyone?
A functional or hybrid.
Right on, exactly. So that's the opportunity right there, exactly what you're talking about. How do you take something that you've done in, let's say, in Emily's case, if I may, in a volunteer capacity, and how do you use that to your advantage to position yourself for employment? You use the right style of format, and that would be absolutely, the functional style would allow you to, because at the end of the day, do you really think that learning information management could be all that different from one environment to another? Yeah, there'll be some internal processes and policies, but at the end of the day, the alphabet is still the same. It still runs A to Z, right? So if you're in charge of information management in a volunteer capacity, that can quickly translate to how you would do that in a paid capacity. I love volunteer. I love working with people that have lots of volunteer experience because it's such a rich experience, right? And when you use that chronological resume format, it's almost like it appears as a sneeze at the end of a page. It's just kind of like, there it is, you know, kind of haphazardly placed. But if you use it in a functional style resume, all of a sudden it's placed back up into the skill set and it becomes a real piece of currency that you can use to position yourself into a new job.
Thank you.
Yeah. Excellent. We're going to go to Denise and then Liz after. So Denise, go ahead.
Yeah, what about as far as for, is there a way to put in your resume or you match with your job search about your values and, you know, it's part of that job satisfaction and really getting out that you kind of align yourself? I've kind of heard that in the past of you need to really kind of know what you're all about and really the company or where you're looking for jobs and stuff, do they really match it that you're really going to be a good fit?
Right, great question. That's a great question, Denise. So when you come to me for career exploration, that's what we really concentrate on. And we do a career sketch, it's called. It's a narrative assessment. And in that narrative assessment, if that becomes a desire that comes out in your assessment, and that, you know, is a first foremost must-have, then your job search becomes tailored to those industries or those employers that share that same same value or same, you know, that whatever it is that you have determined as a value or as a must-have, then that's how you go about the job search. You align yourself with those particular organizations. And how do you do that? One of the ways that you do that is to do your research and development, right? So determining what is a necessity perpetuates how you're going to approach the actual job search. And I'll tell you, you make such a good point because if you do not align, if you work for an organization that does not align with your values and your, another word for that would be, you know, your perception, your life perception, then that's called disenfranchising. And just the unfortunate thing with being disenfranchised with an organization, it's a slow, slippery slope. It just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. So, you know, that has to be put at the forefront before you even consider employment with a particular employer because, you know, if they're not matching up to your own code of ethics or whatever you deem to be important in your life story, then you're going to every little time it's you know, it's strained or, you know, it's impacted is going to be another slippery slope down the slide that you're going to take because you're going to, you know, you're going to see exception in how they run their business or how they operate, and it, you know, it's just not a good collaboration there. I'm so happy to hear that people are thinking about things like that because, you know, there's two parts of the process here. There's getting a job, which is just a survival job, which there's no doubt in my mind that that is, for some, a huge thing. That is a huge reality. But then there's also the other component of, but what is my career? Like, what is my life's work? And, you know, you can, and for some, it's like a scale, right? For some, they just want to be able to go to work and leave work at work and come home, and that's where they really start to live. For others, their life is their work. And, you know, I have to be able to treat the client with how they're presenting when they come through the door. They're going to tell me what's most important to them, and it's going to be my job to help coach them to where they need to go to be able to find a parallel with what their life story is and how they work. And that's the only way you're going to find true passion in what you do. Because at the end of the day, it's 40 hours a week. And if you're not liking your job, that's a heck of a lot of time that you're spending not being happy.
Exactly. So Liz had a point with reference to the volunteering, Holly?
Yes, I handle the volunteering bit by listing it under experience instead of naming it work. Absolutely, that's a creative way of doing it, Liz, for sure. If your volunteer experience, however, is key to you getting this job, like if that has a really strong currency, we'll say, because that's the word we've been using, to you being able to position yourself, I'd even position it and give it a better platform than that. I'd stick it right into the career profile that you have at the top. You know, how your volunteer experience has really informed how you want to work. So sick of survival jobs. Right on, Andre. I hear you on that one.
Oh, excellent. Any other questions? I think you're going to have a following for the next open house.
Yeah. So much we can cover. We could literally have an open house. Don't say this to Kara. We could have an open house every day. So getting connected, this is good because and Andrew, I hope you reach out too because, you know, even though you're in Toronto, you know, you're a military family member, so anyone who is a military family member can access our support. This is how you get...
Excuse me, Holly?
Yeah.
Sorry to bother you. Rebecca is just going to be leaving, and I just wanted to let her know that you're going to be getting an after-session email with all these resources and information on the next session. So go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Okay, thank you.
Good. Talk to you later. So for now, while we're going through this crazy experiment of working from home, I am actually checking my voicemail every couple of days, but I'm always checking my email. So that's probably the best way to get a hold of me. The other thing is, if you want to get connected to the other supports and services that are on, you know, that are in the MFRC, please go to our website. You can follow us on Twitter, on Facebook. It's updated daily. There's always things that are going on. Trish is here from our Veterans Family Services program, and you know, we've got parenting support. There's just a whole buffet there that people can, anything that has to do with the risk, separation, and mobility of the lifestyle is how we actually program. So we're still 100% in business right now and supporting our military families. So I really encourage you to get connected because even though the bricks and mortar, the doors might be shut, we've all kind of repositioned ourselves to work remotely, so our services haven't been interrupted at all. So let's just take a sec if we can. Do we have time, Margaret? Do we have like a couple of minutes?
We have all the time in the world. So
okay.
If I'd like to draw your eyes to the top left-hand side of the screen. Here you're going to find an arrow. If you click on the arrow, then you can click somewhere on the board. You can do that for me, then I can see who's got an arrow. On the top left-hand side, a big, thick arrow. Pointer, great. Denise has hers. And if you can't find it, let me know. Andre, can you see yours,
Yeah.
Andrew?
I'm having a hard time finding the arrow.
Okay, on the top
The left-hand side. At the top?
Did you join using the new browser today?
Oh, I actually have WebEx on my computer, so I just...
Oh, wonderful. Okay, so you may not have the pointer tool then. You can use the chat. What is your take home from today? If you can use the capital letter T if you have a pointer, and then you can write, there we go. We got more pointers coming in. So just use the capital letter T, and we're going to give you 1 minute. Just tell us what your take home is of today. And just write
something that you found really useful for today.
Using your capital letter T, and if you don't have a capital letter T and a pointer, no problem. Use it in the chat. What is your take home today? And I'll write on the board for you. Go. And give a screen check when you finish writing. You may have to click away so we can see. I think we've got them all.
Okay.
Want to just go through them?
Sure, I'll go through them. Great. So Sandra, how do you say your name? Is it Chandra or Chandra?
Chandra.
Chandra, lovely. To handle gaps in employment, using a hybrid or functional format is best. Absolutely, you're converted, love it. Thank you. Denise says, each job application has its own resume specific. So true. And you know, we're not confined by having one style anymore. So I really encourage people to make sure that their resume is not only a reflection of their own personality, because it still has to speak to the requirements of the job, but it will stand out if there are, you know, if the creativity is there, and if it, yeah, it's just, you have to figure out a way to separate yourself from the rest of the competition. Andre, a lot. Need to change my resume. It was chronological. Andre, you and I need to meet, so you need to hook up. Halifax and region, that would be Margaret. Target, oh, sorry.
It's actually Andrew.
Oh, it's Andrew. Okay. So, Andrew, a good resume gets you selected for an interview. Target, yes, absolutely. Again, it's a congratulations. If you've gotten an interview from your resume, you're already halfway there. You've already beat out a lot of the competition, so you're well on your way. Target the job requirement in your resume, always. Always make sure that link is strong and it's easily identifiable to those employers or to the hiring committee that's part of the process. Emily, I learned about the different styles of resumes and how I am not using the one that works best for my volunteer experience. Well, at least you've learned, you know, there's room for growth with that as well. So absolutely.
Thanks, Sandra.
What was that?
Chandra's heading out, and Andrew was just saying that he still has to have an interview last week with my resume, but still need help. Yeah.
Ah, good. Okay. So, yes, absolutely. Reach out. So I guess the other thing that we just kind of want to leave you with is there'll be some after-session notes that we'll email to you, and in there will be a package of a resource book that I use with a lot of my clients. And what's next for us is that we are going to have a webinar next week. It'll be Wednesday from 7 to 9, so it's in the evening. And it will be on career transition through the lens of preparing your career for a posting. But if you are going through career transition regardless, there's a lot of good content and information for you that you'd get out of that. And then I think our next virtual open house, Margaret, is actually not until May. And I have decided to do the job search and the hidden job market on that. So if you want to learn more about those two components, which may, you know, make up a pretty significant piece of the whole job transition process, I suggest you tune in for that, because we'll have some great tips and tricks on how to navigate that.
The whole month?
Well, I'm on, can you believe this? I'm actually on pre-scheduled vacation. Like I had this pre-scheduled for a while, so I've got a week, the middle of the month that I'm off. But I might see if I can squeak something in the first couple of weeks of May. We'll see if Carol will let me have a little time.
You're awesome. This has been fantastic. I'm going to stop the recording now, and we'll be here if you have any questions.
Thanks, everybody.